Do you need to give difficult or challenging feedback to a direct report, and maybe that conversation didn't go so well the last time, or you've had a negative experience with feedback? Well, in this video, I'm going to share the 3 most common mistakes that leaders make that often have these conversations go so poorly and what you can do to avoid them. Hi, I'm Chris Littlefield. I'm the founder of Beyond Thank You. I'm a regular contributor to Harvard Business Review and Forbes. I've spent over 15 years helping leaders at top companies build and maintain cultures where their people feel valued and where great work gets done. Let's jump in. People's relationship to having feedback conversations is like people's relationship to going running, doing your taxes, or taking an algebra test. There's a small group of people who have positive experience, so they jump right in. But then the majority of people, the idea of going for a run makes their knees hurt or their body ache. Or the idea of doing their taxes or taking algebra test induces so much anxiety that they'll find anything else to do than to do that very thing. Now, the problem is when we don't give our employees feedback, when we don't address performance issues, then we never give that other person the opportunity to grow. And it also means that those issues that we're not addressing or that feedback that we're not giving means that that work falls back onto our shoulders as a leader, or even worse, it falls onto the shoulders of the other employees on our team, which is just not fair for them. So why is it that so many people have these negative associations with feedback conversations? Well, many times because there's a lot of mistakes that people make when they do it. So let's look at the 3 most common mistakes that I see that have these conversations go so poorly. Mistake number 1 is that leaders blindside employees with feedback. We show up to a regular one-on-one thinking things that are great, and then our manager drops a bomb about something we did 3 days ago, 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago that frustrated them, that we had no clue that we didn't do what they wanted. Then when they share that amygdala gets hijacked because we feel like we're getting attacked and we're surprised to begin with. And then all of a sudden we either go into fight or flight mode and feel like we need to defend ourselves, protect ourselves, justify ourselves, or the opposite happens and people shut down and they stop talking, or some people break into tears. And then when we have that emotional reaction, the manager goes, oh my God, I shouldn't have shared this. I did the wrong thing. And so then they stop having those conversations. And it ends up being a bad experience, both for the manager who's delivering the feedback and for the employee who's there to receive it but can't because their amygdala gets hijacked and they've shut down. Mistake number 2 is that the leader is not prepared. They're not actually clear on what they're giving feedback on, so instead they're like, I just don't like it when you do this, or it really frustrates me when you do this, or I don't want you to do it this way. But they don't have examples, it's not clear to the employee, they don't know what they want them to do instead, and so the employee's left with, well, I don't really get it, and I understand that you're frustrated, but this isn't really helpful, this isn't really constructive. So mistake number 2 is that the leader is not prepared. And mistake number 3 builds on mistake number 2 because the conversation is only focused on the past, about the frustration, about what the person did wrong, and doesn't give the person a pathway to improve their performance or to get better. So the 3 mistakes is 1, we blindside people. 2, we're not prepared with information and examples. And 3, it's only focused on the past and not about what the person can do to improve in the future. So now let's look at what we can do to avoid these mistakes and make sure these conversations go as smooth as possible. Number 1, when you're scheduling the conversation, be transparent. Rarely, except if you're in healthcare and you're working in the emergency room, we don't necessarily need to give this feedback right on the spot, especially if somebody just made a mistake and they're still frustrated about something that's going on. Wait to have the conversation, but you may schedule it for your next one-on-one or a week out, and you may start by saying, hey, you know what? I want to have a conversation about some of the things that I think are going well and some of the things that I want you to be working on. I'd like you to be thinking about X, Y, and Z prior to our conversation. Okay? Or, hey, we haven't spoken in a while. There's a couple things that I have on my radar that I want you to be working on, and I'd like to have that conversation in our next one-on-one. But be transparent with the person so they know what they're coming to. Now, when you do this, it's likely to trigger a bit of anxiety in the employee. Did I do something wrong? Did I make a mistake? And what you don't want to do is to try to play it off. No, everything's fine. It's okay if there is something you want them to be working on. Instead, just reiterate. You know what? We haven't had a chance to speak in a while. There are some things that I want you to be working on. I want you to think about this prior to our meeting, and we'll discuss it when we meet. Number two is making sure that you're prepared for the conversation, that you're clear, you're organized about what you want to communicate, why you want to communicate, and what your commitments are. So you want to be able to answer these questions ahead of time and use these to help you prepare for whatever feedback conversation that you're going to have. What is my goal for the conversation? Maybe it's to openly discuss X and create and commit to some sort of plan for moving forward. What is my commitment to this person? Maybe I want them to succeed. I want them to grow or develop, but it's important to know that so you know your reason for actually having it. And then for each area that you want them to improve, it's important that you have the following information: what you're observing now, examples of the actual behavior, the impact of that behavior or actions on you, the team, the organization, your clients, what you'd like to see them do in the future and why you want to see them do it, examples of what success would look like when they were doing it, and if applicable, ideas of how you can support them moving forward. Now, the caveat that I want to give right now is that if you don't have examples, if you're not aware of the impact, and most importantly, what you'd want to see them do in the future and what that would look like, you may not be ready to deliver this feedback right now. Now, this is not permission to put this conversation off for 6 months, but what it means is you may need to put a couple hours aside to be able to really think this out and get clarity on what you want to communicate. Now, also, I want to share that it's important to write your answers out. Don't just get these thoughts in your mind. Maybe after you've done this multiple times successfully, you'll be able to figure it out in your mind. But for the first couple conversations as you're trying to improve, make sure you're jotting out notes for each one of these questions there and writing out those examples. That's also going to signal to your employee that you really cared and that you took the time to really get clear on what you want to see and how you're going to support them to improve. So at this point, we've addressed mistake number one by being transparent with our scheduling so people aren't blindsided and they know the conversation they're coming into. We've addressed mistake number two by being clear and prepared about what we want to communicate and have written and thought it out and even tried communicating it. And so now we need to address mistake number three, is not focusing too much on the past and talking about the future. And a great rule of thumb for this one is to use what Spotify uses in their organization. So they have a rule. Our feedback should be 10% on the past, because we do need that point of reference of what happened, 20% on the present in what's going on now, and then 70% of our conversation should be about what we're going to be doing in the future. So when you're having your meetings, make sure you're not spending too much time on what happened and more about what we want to see happen in the future. When you're having the conversation, also make sure that you're focusing on behavior and not just on the person. I can't change me, but I can change how I act and how I show up. And then also when you're having the conversation, keep on signaling to the person your partnership and your support by letting them know, I know you can do this. We're going to do this together. I have your back. And before you leave those meetings, make sure you have a clear plan in place. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what's going to look like. Here's how I'm going to support you. And then schedule those follow-up meetings and those check-ins to see how things are going and what additional support they may need to be able to act on what you talked about. And if we do these things, if we're transparent, if we're clear and organized, if we are focusing more on the future than on the past, then we're going to have more positive experiences delivering feedback, and our people will have more positive experiences receiving it. And together, that will keep our lines of communication open, our work will flow more smoothly, more work will get done, and it will be a better experience for everyone involved. If you're looking for additional resources, please check out the video description below, where I include a link to my article in Forbes on how to prepare to give difficult and challenging feedback. And also, if you want to provide training to your leaders, where we walk them through a process to effectively schedule, to plan out their thoughts and prepare for giving challenging feedback, and even role model how to be able to deliver it effectively, then reach out to me at beyondthankyou.com. Once again, I'm Chris Littlefield. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit like, subscribe, and share at least one other person who you know will make a difference for. And together, let's build cultures where people feel valued every day. Take care.